Teachers, what is the most ridiculous thing you have heard a parent say? Every single adult should know where every single child is on campus at all times. The mom said, yelling at me. I had been giving her son extra help after school, along with some other students. We were 6 weeks in, and Mom hadn't come back to school night or made any attempt to speak to or contact me. She came to pick up her son and had no idea where to go because she hadn't been to our school before or read the after-school group flyer. Instead, she yelled at some other teachers who were waiting out in the front of the school with some of their own after-school students to be picked up. They had no idea who she was or who her child was. She couldn't ask them where my class was because she didn't even know the name of her child's teacher. I walked up with her son as this was happening. She turned and continued to chew me out. She said a lot of ridiculous things that day. It was complete and blatant projection of irresponsibility.
It's wild how some parents react. I once had a similar experience where a mom was upset because I didn't recognize her. She had never attended any of the meetings or met me. Instead of asking for help, she just started yelling. It was awkward. I can't imagine being that out of the loop. At least in my case, I just stayed calm and helped her find her kid.
I taught 4th grade next to a military base, so my class list was in pencil. Midway through the year, I got a Dutch girl. She didn't speak a word of English. Her dad dropped her off in my room after signing her up, then told me not to make any exceptions for her. She'd learn English on her own. However, she was to be exempt from Math BC. She's never had a math class before. The man was an engineer with the Army. I taught her math. She appeared to have very limited exposure to it. By the last semester, she was on honor roll, including math.
That's a solid story. It shows how patience and support can really help someone adapt, even if they're not in the best situation initially. It's impressive that she managed to catch up so quickly, especially in math. The dad's approach was tough, but it sounds like you stepped in at the right time. It must have felt good to see her succeed despite the challenges.
I was in an IEP meeting. When the counselor asked the student what his post-high school's plans were, he proudly stated that he was interested in studying animal science. His mother angrily swung her head at him and said, "Animal science? Oh hell no. What about our plans for the NFL?" The student got embarrassed and said, "Well, I need a backup plan, Mom." And she said, "Not when you're as great of a player as you." The student was mediocre at best at football.
That's an interesting dynamic. The pressure from a parent can be heavy, especially when they have their own dreams for their kids. It's good that the student is thinking about a backup plan. Not everyone makes it in sports. Balancing expectations and personal interests can be tough. It seems like he's trying to carve his own path, even if his mom doesn't fully see it yet.
Yes, my child is misbehaving, throwing chairs, hitting other kids, etc. But you took his paper airplane in 2nd grade and scrunched it up, so this is really your own doing. I think the best thing to do is for you to help him make a new paper airplane and apologize. Then I'm sure he'll behave. The kid was in 6th grade at this point.
I remember a similar situation. Back in school, a friend of mine lost it over a pencil someone borrowed without asking. He got so worked up that he ended up causing a scene. The teacher made the kid who borrowed it help him decorate a new one. It was a silly fix, but it did help smooth things over. Sometimes, it takes a simple gesture to clear the air.
I used to be a preschool teacher, ages 4 and 5, and we did evaluations every few months. One 4-year-old girl, sweet as could be, could only count to the number 4. She struggled with other things, but the counting was by far the worst. Her parents come in to the evaluation and are delighted that their daughter could count to 4. We had to gently explain to them that she was well behind the other kids. Even the actually challenged kids surpassed her. She was obviously bright, so we asked them what they worked on with her at home. Nothing. They did nothing with her. They assumed that she wouldn't start learning till teachers taught her. To their benefit, they did start working with her at home, and by the beginning of the next year, she was ready to move up. I've never been so proud and disappointed at the same time in a set of parents.
It's interesting how parents can be so out of touch sometimes. This girl had potential, but her parents just didn't see it. They thought school was the only place for learning, which is kind of a missed opportunity. It's good they finally stepped up, though. It shows that with a bit of effort, things can change. Being proud and disappointed at the same time is a tough spot to be in.
This might not really count, but when I was a swim instructor, this parent was complaining about how her son wasn't improving in the swim lessons. It was true that sometimes I had trouble motivating him, but I felt he was doing well. Apparently, she also complained that I wasn't the only one teaching his lessons and that I got several substitutes. That was not true. I taught all of the lessons. So in the next lesson, I thought the kid was doing well again and improving. I even got him to swim short distances without assistance. He was 5 years old and he couldn't touch the bottom. The mother didn't seem to think so. She said something like, he can't just keep going back and forth and kicking the whole time. You do realize that's how people swim, right? They sadly didn't come back. Edit. Thanks for the replies, everyone. I did reel all of them. I didn't think my post would get this popular.
It's funny how parents sometimes see things differently. I remember a time as a coach when a parent was upset because their kid wasn't progressing fast enough. The kid was trying hard and making decent strides, but the mom was focused on every little detail. I figured swimming is about getting comfortable in the water. In the end, they decided to leave, but it's wild how perspective can change everything.
My aunt's a teacher, and I remember her telling me about one strange parent encounter a year or so ago. She taught maybe the 6th or 7th grade. There was this one kid in her class severely underperforming, and even after numerous confrontations with him, he never worked in class or got his grades back up. My aunt had to call his mother down to the school and sat down and tried to talk to her about it. She mentioned that she felt that he had the capacity to perform much better, but he didn't. Well, the mother just denied it. To be clear, she wasn't crazy or anything, just in absolute denial. My aunt showed her his grades, but she ripped the paper apart and told her that it's not true. She said, "I don't know what you're talking about. My son is perfect," and stormed out of the school.
That's a pretty wild story. It's surprising how some parents can be so in denial about their kids. Your aunt must have felt frustrated trying to get through to her. It's tough when the support isn't there at home. Makes you wonder if that kid ever got the help he needed after that. It's strange how denial can just shut down any conversation. Hopefully, he found his way in the end.
I was a 22 years old female Asian middle school teacher in a district that was 99% black. You couldn't find another person who looked quite like me in a 20-mile radius. Had a parent tell me that I couldn't possibly be a good influence on her child. After all, I do skanky things like nails and hair during my off hours. The community's impression of Asian women were that we all worked at nail salons. The extremely skewed Asian stereotypes, however, worked in my favor for classroom management when my kids were convinced I knew martial arts. Anytime I put on my teacher face when the students were misbehaving, one of the kids would exclaim, "Oh shit, Miss is about to kung fu your ass." I never had too much problems with the kids that year.
That's an interesting situation. Being the only Asian teacher in a mostly black school must have been quite the experience. It's funny how stereotypes can sometimes work to your advantage, like when the kids thought you could do martial arts. That probably helped maintain some order in the classroom. Parents can have their own views, but it sounds like you made a positive impact despite the challenges.
This finally inspired me to make an account. Multiple times over the school year, she emailed me with something like, "My child has been coming home saying she has no homework in your class. I believe she should be having homework from your class every day. can you please gear some homework? 1. There was actually homework 2. The kid was not turning in any homework that quarter 3. The zeros were all reflected in the online grade report, which the parent apparently refused to read.
It's funny how some parents just don't see what's right in front of them. I had a similar situation in school. A friend's mom kept asking why he wasn't passing. He was failing because he never turned in anything. The grades were there, plain as day. Sometimes you just want to shake them and say, "Look closer." But people see what they want to see, I guess.
My mother is a retired college English teacher. Helicopter parents would regularly call to inquire about their kids' grades. Mom, that's confidential as per college policy. If you want to learn your child's grade, you're going to have to ask him/her. Parent, but I'm paying his/hers tuition. Mom, it doesn't matter. Your child has a right to privacy. I can/will only discuss your child's grade with him/her. Parent, I'm calling the dean. Mom, by all means, rinse and repeat over and over and over.
I can picture that situation. My friend's mom was a teacher too and had similar encounters. Parents would always want to know every detail, thinking their money bought them the right to know everything. My friend would joke about how her mom handled it with calmness, just repeating the same line. It was always the same script. I guess some parents never really understand how it works. Privacy is important, no matter the payment.
My wife is an elementary school teacher and suspected that one of her students may be autistic. The kid wouldn't communicate well at all, had issues with using the bathroom, and showed other classic signs of autism. My wife had a conference with the mother and explained that she would like him to be evaluated, but the mother refused and said that if her son did have autism, my wife was the one who caused it. I'm not a teacher, but I coach my kids' youth sports teams. I once had a dad approach me and bribe me $50 to prevent a certain kid from playing in our upcoming flag football game. These are 6-year-old kids. The kid did make a costly mistake in the previous game, but the fact that this random dad was willing to pay me to bench the kid was mind-blowing. Edit, I should have made it clear that I did not accept the money. The dad attempted to bribe me, and I turned it down for obvious reasons.
It's wild how some parents think. Your wife just wanted to help, but the mom flipped it on her. Then there's that dad trying to bribe you over a 6-year-old's game. It's just youth sports, not the Super Bowl. You did the right thing by not taking the money. Kids should learn, even from mistakes. Each experience seems to show how tricky parenting can get. People can be pretty unreasonable.
I was a high school varsity coach. I had a nice girl on my team with very little talent. After not starting, her mom came up to me and said, "It is really sad that Jenny isn't playing. How can you hold it against her?" I asked her what she was talking about. Her response, "Well, her dad's brother dated you in middle school and he broke up with you." Funny thing is, I have no clue who she was talking about.
That's quite the situation. The mom thought there was some deep-seated grudge over a relationship long gone. It's interesting how people can make assumptions based on old connections. Coaching can lead to these unexpected interactions, and you just have to navigate them as they come. In the end, it's about helping the team improve, not personal histories.
This family was incredibly well off. The little girl wore Matilda Jane clothing every single day, which is expensive. The individual pieces are between $40 to $60. She almost never wore the same thing twice. Compare her to a little boy in my class. His dad was in and out of jail. He always wore dirty jeans and the same pair of boots. His mom cut his hair, and you could tell. But he was full of personality. All the kids wanted to play with him. He got a little rowdy and did say some lightly inappropriate things like, "That's badass," or "What the hell?" But I would never peg him as a behaviorally challenged kid. Well, the rich mother approached my lead teacher and flat out demanded that her little girl never have contact with this boy because he was a bad influence. She wasn't to sit by him or speak to him or play with him. When we refused, she gave all these instructions to her daughter, who would approach the little boy and announce over the whole class, "You have to leave here, so I can play." People never cease to piss me off.
It's wild how kids can show personality regardless of their background. The rich girl had everything, but the boy had charm. The mom's approach was pretty over the top. Instead of teaching kindness, she tried to isolate her daughter from someone who had a good heart. It's odd how adults complicate things for kids. It's really just about playing and being friends, not about clothes or money. Kids know that, which is pretty refreshing.
I wasn't a teacher, but I was volunteering while in college to help a school district run a group field day. Me and another friend of mine were asked to sub in for a Class V class game of tug of war for first graders. One class had 6 less students. Of course, me and my friend ham it up, act like we're really struggling ECT. Afterwards, one, the parents of the kid from the team we were on just started shouting at us, telling us we should be ashamed for not trying our hardest and for faking.
That's a rough situation. You're just trying to have some fun with the kids, and then someone turns it into a big deal. It's surprising how seriously some adults take these games. Sometimes people forget that it's all about the kids enjoying themselves, not just winning. I guess not everyone gets that it's just a tug of war for first graders.
Had a star athlete who was being recruited by Ivy League schools failing my English class. On top of his general poor academic performance, I also caught him cheating on a homework assignment, which he vehemently denied. His mom scheduled a meeting with an administrator and proceeded to berate me and to accuse me of discriminating against student athletes. I was the pep club sponsor at the time. Then she said her son would never cheat. I pulled out his homework and proceeded to read one of his answers. As a 16-year-old girl, Mom then begins yelling at him. "You can't even cheat right. What's wrong with you? How are you going to get into college if you can't cheat?"
That's a pretty wild situation. It's crazy how some parents react when their kids mess up. The whole, "you can't even cheat right" part is something else. You'd think they'd want their kid to do better. Makes you wonder about the pressure on these athletes, and how it all affects them. It's a tough spot both for teachers and students, especially with expectations from everyone.
This one is kind of sad. Had a girl around 9 years old with severe behavior problems. She couldn't cope with a lot of simple things and would fly off the handle. This was due to a lot of bad stuff happening to her in her short life. One day, this girl was trying to break down the office door to get to some other students who had locked themselves in there for their own protection. Her mother turned up and just watched her for a while, before saying she's behaving like this because the upstairs neighbors put a chip in her neck to track her, and it's feeding back through her ears, so that's why she's always grumpy. Long story short, the girl went to live with relatives while Mom went into a psych ward. After a few months, Mom has returned, and she is caring for her daughter. It was pretty tough for a while, but they seem to be getting back on track now. I'm constantly amazed by the resilience of kids. Sure, this girl was acting out, but when I was informed of all the shit she has had to go through, it's amazing she's actually functioning at all.
It's heavy to think about what some kids go through. This girl had it rough, and her mother seemed to be struggling too. It's wild how outside factors can mess up a kid's behavior. But hearing that they found a way to reconnect and support each other is a relief. It shows that no matter how tough things get, kids can adapt and surprise you. Resilience is something for sure.
Not me, but my dad. He has lots of crazy parent stories. This one's my favorite. He taught a Spanish elective class at a middle school. End of the year, mother of a student calls, asking him to raise her son's grade from an F to a C. She explained that she promised her son that he could go on a trip to Mexico if he passed the Spanish class, and he'll be so upset if he can't go.
It's funny how parents can get involved in their kids' education. Your dad must have had a tough choice there. I get the mom's desperation. Trips can be a big deal for kids. But it's kind of wild to think a grade could be influenced just like that. I wonder how he handled it, sticking to his principles while also considering the kid's dream. It's a tricky balance for teachers.
Work in a special education program, have a lot of really terrible parents. One, parent of an overweight 8th grader. Send her child to school with a lunch each day that probably equals roughly 300 calories. Kid is always mad. Convince mom to start letting the kid buy lunch, which is usually chicken fingers and fries. Mom has the audacity to accuse us of making her daughter fat with French fries. Here's the kicker. Some of our staff do in-house work at their house. In the house, this girl is literally allowed to eat whatever she wants when she wants it. We're talking full jars of pickles, cookies hidden all over the house, and chocolate bars for breakfast. You are making your kid fat. 2. Mom is super into the health thing. When we do cooking projects, she's way into making sure all the ingredients we buy as a school are all natural healthy brands. She sends in healthy frozen waffles for her kid to eat for breakfast on days we make breakfast. She also likes to fill his lunch up with Pop-Tarts and Oreos. Yeah, okay, those are totally all natural.
It's interesting how some parents view things. One kid barely gets calories at lunch and is upset, while the mom blames the school for weight gain. Then there's the health-conscious parent who sends in healthy stuff but packs junk in the lunch. Makes you wonder how they connect the dots, or if they even realize the impact of their choices. It's a tough job trying to navigate that.
Not a teacher, but a student. I'll admit that maybe I shouldn't have gotten involved, but there was a boy in my class who I was really worried about. He didn't do schoolwork, and he just didn't. Never did his schoolwork. He was obviously clever and actually really nice, so I was concerned. One day as school was letting out, I saw his mom in the parking lot. I talked to her for a few moments and decided to throw caution to the wind and address my concerns. Look, Mrs. Name, please don't tell him I told you, but kid isn't doing any of his schoolwork. Like literally none, and I'm really concerned about it. The mom smiled at me, replied, "Oh, it's okay, he has ADHD." And then she patted me on the head. I was too stunned to do anything but nod and walk away. We were 16.
That's a tough situation. It's good that you cared enough to speak up. I get how being dismissed like that can feel weird. You're just trying to help, but then there's that awkward moment. It's interesting how some people don't realize how much schoolwork matters. At 16, you expect more seriousness from adults. That pat on the head seems more condescending than comforting. But you did what you thought was right. That counts.
Here's another one. Kid wrote a perfect sentence in Spanish as an answer on a test. Unfortunately, it was copied verbatim from a worksheet that she had on the floor next to her. I asked her what that sentence meant, and she did not know. Of course, she got no credit for it. Father was livid, said that she had memorized it and should get full credit for a good sentence. I responded that if she memorized it, then it was plagiarism. She had to write an original sentence. Dad was furious at me and made threats.
That situation sounds pretty tense. It's tough when parents don't see the bigger picture about learning. The kid might have tried to take a shortcut, but it backfired. It's fair to ask for original work, but I get why the dad was upset. It's never easy balancing rules with how parents feel about their kids' grades. It probably made for some awkward moments after that.
Had a parent email me after school was out for the year that she had checked our school's grade/attendance website. She saw that there was an unexcused tardy for a specific day, and that student wasn't tardy, and I'm sure of that. Please check and change. Had another mom email me that her son couldn't write an in-class journal on such and such day because he didn't have a pencil and was too afraid to ask me for one. I give out pencils almost daily with no repercussions, and apparently she didn't see the irony in the fact that, in the same email, she asked about whether he could turn a few homework assignments he had missed. Maybe he was too afraid to ask for a pencil at home. 2. Finally, had a dad yell at me during parent-teacher conferences that I was un-American because I don't teach my students that all Muslims are the enemy and we should be wiping them out.
Dealing with parents can be pretty wild. One time, a mom was adamant her kid wasn't late even when the records said otherwise. Another insisted her son couldn't ask for a pencil, which I give out freely. It's odd how they miss the bigger picture. Then there was a dad who got heated about my teaching methods, claiming I was un-American for not promoting hate. It's a lot to handle sometimes.
Parent/teacher conferences my first year teaching with a mom who had been in the US for less than a year and was not very familiar with our educational system. After going through her son's grades and progress in great detail, she asked about his behavior. I let her know there was nothing that was beyond typical for a 10-year-old boy and that he was a great kid. She then told me if I should ever have any problems with him, I should pull his ear. I said that wouldn't be necessary, and besides, we aren't allowed hit or touch kids for discipline. She looked surprised and then asked about paddling. I told her no again and said I couldn't imagine ever needing to paddle a student. She then asked me if she could sign a note giving me permission to paddle her son if I ever needed to, and was adamant about it. It made me realize the cultural differences regarding education and discipline between different countries. In some ways, kids get away with far too much here, but there has to be a happy medium somewhere that doesn't require corporal punishment.
It's interesting how cultural views on discipline can differ. I remember a similar situation with a friend's parents when they moved here. They were shocked at how things worked in schools. They really believed in strict discipline, unlike what we typically see. It kinda made me appreciate the balance we try to find today. It's a reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to raising and educating kids.
I'm not a teacher, but my mother has strabismus. She's cross-eyed. One time a parent-teacher, my mom and my 6th grade teacher were arguing about me. Then my mom said, "My child is not a liar. I always say, look me in the eye and tell me the truth." And the teacher blurted out which one, which caused me to spit take my water.
That's a memorable moment. It's always interesting when parents get involved in school stuff. The teacher's response was pretty clever, though. I can imagine how awkward that must have felt for you at the time. It sounds like you got to see a funny side of a tense situation with your mom standing up for you. Those moments stick with you.
Obligatory. I'm not a teacher, but my mom once went to my elementary school to argue with my teacher over something I can't remember. My school was called Blaise Pascal Elementary School. It is in France, and Blaise Pascal was a famous writer-edit person. Well, she started getting angry at the teacher and wanted to speak to the head. So told the teacher, "You're not helping me. Now I want to speak to Mr. Blaise Pascal."
That's a classic mom moment. It's always awkward when parents get involved in school stuff. I can just imagine the teacher's confusion, trying to explain that Mr. Blaise Pascal wasn't around to help. Makes you wonder if she thought the school was named after someone who was still alive. I mean, it's funny in hindsight, but at the time, probably a bit stressful. Just shows how passionate parents can be.
Not a teacher, but I did IT support for a charter school circa 1999. I caught a kid installing a key logger and remote access on a teacher computer. I reported it to the principal. They searched the kid's bag and found a CDR labeled AOLT00LZ, which had a bunch of exploits on it. They called a meeting with the student, parent, counselor, etc. I explained what the T00LZ did, the security implications, and what could happen if a student captured a teacher password, then used it to modify grades or view student records. The clueless rich soccer mom looks at her spoiled brat son and asks, "Where did you get this?" "I got it from AOL. America Online." Soccer mom looks at me and says, "Well, if it's from AOL, it can't be bad. They wouldn't allow that." There was no disciplinary action against the kid, but the following day, I locked down the school firewall so that nothing got in or out unless it was whitelist.
This reminds me of a time in high school when a friend tried hacking into the school's network just for fun. He ended up crashing the whole system during testing week. The principal called him in with his parents, and he just shrugged it off, saying it was a misunderstanding. Nothing happened to him either, but they tightened up security after that. Funny how people just don't get the risks involved.
I have some good stories about parents being absolutely ridiculous when it came to what their precious little angel deserved and stuff like that. However, my favorite parent convo happened when a parent saw the math clock I have in my room and asked me how they were supposed to be able to tell what time it was. The clock replaces the numbers with relatively easy high school level math problems. Yikes. 3 is replaced with pi, 0.14. I thought they were joking and laughed it off, but then they made another comment that they think they could figure some of them out, but it would just be such a pain to have to keep doing all the problems just to tell the time. I then spent the next 15 minutes trying to explain to them how it shouldn't matter because the numbers on a clock are always in the same spot. To this day, I'm not fully convinced they truly understood what I was trying to explain to them. The thing that kills me is that their daughter ended up being one of the brightest students I had that year.
That's a funny story. It's wild how some parents can struggle with simple concepts. You'd think basic math would be easy for them, especially with a bright kid. It's strange how that disconnect happens. You expect them to grasp things quickly, but then reality hits. It's like they focus too much on the surface instead of the logic behind it. Just goes to show that intelligence doesn't always transfer between generations.
A student was constantly disrupting class, not completing work, and scoring very poorly on all assessments. I contacted his father, who was a teacher in our building, asking if he had time to talk after numerous emails about grades and behavior. When we sat down, and I told him what was going on, and asked what he thought I could do to help. He explained that when the pollen was high, his son was very confrontational and could not complete his work. He said there was nothing I could do, and that this happens every year.
That's interesting. It's tough when a student's behavior isn't really a reflection of their potential. The dad's explanation about the pollen is surprising. It shows how outside factors can impact performance, even if they're not obvious. It's a reminder that sometimes issues are deeper than we think, and communication with parents is key. In this case, it seems like the teacher was left with limited options.
Sunday school teacher here. Some 2-year-olds I was working with were playing with some toys, and Kid A tackled Kid BS toy and yelled, "I killed you. You're dead." Kid BS mom was in the room and lectured Kid A on how he shouldn't use the K word or the D word, and asked me to keep an eye out to make sure it wouldn't happen again.
That's classic kid behavior. They don't really grasp the weight of what they're saying. It's interesting how adults can react so strongly to something so innocent. I've seen similar things happen in different settings. Kids just play out their imaginations, not fully understanding the consequences of their words. It's a good reminder of how we teach them about language and feelings early on.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.